All right, in today's lesson, we're going to talk about the Bill of Rights, which is the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. But before we begin the actual Bill of Rights, I want to talk a little bit about the amendment process. And if you remember, amendment means to change. Amend means to change. And again, Article 5 of the Constitution spells out how we can change or amend the Constitution. Okay, there's actually two ways that you can change or amend the Constitution, but actually we've only used one method. But there are two methods, and I'll explain them both. The first way is that if 2/3, which is 66% of both the House and the Senate, propose a change, all right? If they propose a change, then they can discuss it, and then it will go to the states, where 3/4 of the states have to ratify it. So if 66% of Congress, which is the House and the Senate, decide that they should change it, all right, so 66%, say, yes, we should change the Constitution to whatever. It then goes to the states where 3/4 of the states must ratify it. That's the way we've always done it. But there is a second method. The second method is a national convention called by Congress at the request of 2/3 of state legislatures. So if 2/3 of states got together and said, hey, we'd like to change the Constitution, then Congress, that legislative branch, would call a national convention. But again, that way has never happened. The way all 27 changes have occurred is that 66% of Congress have voted to make a change, and then where it's ratified by the states. Okay, so there you have it. That's the amendment process. Let's talk about the first 10 changes, and they occur, if you remember, at the request of mostly the Anti-Federalists. The Anti-Federalists were upset that the original Constitution did not lay out exactly what the government promises to protect. So, to get these states to sign it, especially Virginia, Massachusetts, the Federalists promised that, if you sign it, we promise to add a Bill of Rights. So, here you go. All right, the First Amendment. It has several parts to it. The First Amendment promises to protect your freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and freedom to petition. All right? So, there you go. Freedom of religion, speech, press, and petition, which means you can request, something, petition the Congress to make a change, for instance. All right. Let's break this down. You cannot be arrested for criticizing a government official. Nobody's going to arrest you and say, something, I don't think the president's doing a good job. Or I think the governor is doing a terrible job, or our representative. You cannot be arrested for criticizing a government official, which seems obvious to us today in 2013. But remember, back in 1787, or 1789 actually, there were countries that you could be arrested for criticizing a government official. There are still places in the world today, not in the United States, not in Western countries, but other countries, third world countries, where you can be arrested for criticizing a government official or a government policy. All right, that's freedom of speech. Number 2, you can attend, which is, freedom of religion, any church you want, or none at all. All right, attend a church of your choice, or you do not have to go at all. In other words, we are never going to say the national religion of America is Catholics or Baptists or Lutherans or whatever. There is no established religion. You are free to attend any church you want or none at all. All right? It's freedom of religion. Freedom of the press. You may read any newspaper you want. The government cannot say, we ban the Omaha World Herald because we don't like the way they write stories about us. Nope. That will never happen. Okay? And the press isn't going to get in trouble for writing articles that are critical of a government official. So, freedom of the press. Now, there are some limits. Newspapers cannot knowingly publish lies. They can't say, Barack Obama is stealing money. I mean, that's a lie. Okay, you can't knowingly publish a lie about somebody. You can't publish, actually you can't do that about anybody, but you can't, in a newspaper, even though you have freedom of the press, you can't knowingly publish a lie about somebody. All right? Another example for a limit is you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, right, causing panic. You can't yell bomb. My God, there's a bomb on this plane, all right? So, these kinds of things would put people in harm's way. It would cause panic. So there are limits to your freedoms, okay? Article 2, very controversial. The right to keep and bear arms and to provide, each state is allowed to have a militia, which is the National Guard. Okay. You may, when you reach a certain age, and as long as you're not a convicted felon, you have the right to keep and bear arms. There are limits. You can't have fully automatic weapons. And there's certain types of weapons, obviously, you can't have. We're talking about mostly firearms. You can't have explosives, nuclear weapons, obviously, things like that. But the right to keep and bear arms is a right that is guaranteed in the Second Amendment. However, governments do, and these are the limits, do regulate the private ownership and use of firearms. You can't discharge a firearm within city limits because you might hit somebody. So even though you have the right to keep and bear arms, there are limits that governments have placed on that right. And again, that's pretty controversial. There are many people that like to disband it. My personal opinion is no. I think that you do have the right to keep and bear arms. That's my opinion, though. Okay, Article 3. This is the quartering amendment, that the government promises that they will not keep troops in private homes. Remember, in the Intolerable Acts, after the Boston Tea Party, the British troops had once again required Boston to quarter troops. They had to provide them bedding, they had to provide them candles, they had to provide them drinks. So we want to make sure that the government would never house soldiers in private homes. Okay? I don't really think that's a big issue today. I don't hear a lot of talk about the government talking about putting soldiers in your homes. All right? Article 4. It talks about searches and seizures. Searches and seizures. Now, a cop can't just bust into your home thinking, hey, I think those guys are up to no good. I'm going to go in there and check and see what they've got. Can't do it. Can't do it. Nope. However, if they suspect, and they have to have probable cause, I've seen a lot of known drug dealers going in and out of this house or suspicious activity or something like that. They can request a search warrant. And this will only be granted if a judge writes this, gives them the search warrant. And it's kind of specific. The search warrant says exact places that can be searched and the exact items that can be seized. All right? So a police officer would go to a judge and said, or the district attorney or whoever it might be, may go to the judge and say, hey, listen, I suspect drug activity is going on in this house, or there's illegal weapons, or whatever it might be. And they will have to tell them exactly where they're going to search and what items they're going to seize. Now, there are some exceptions. If you get pulled over and you are arrested, they are going to pat you down. They're going to search you to make sure that you don't have weapons or harmful material or illegal material on there. All right? But they cannot just bust into your home and look for things just on a hunch. Remember the writs of assistance, where British customs officials were able to search ships and warehouses for illegal or smuggled goods. So we want to make sure that our federal government does not have that power to search you without probable cause. Okay, Article 5 is the rights of the accused. Yes, the accused. If you're accused of a crime, you're going to have some rights. All right? First of all, you have to have an indictment from a grand jury for capital crimes and infamous crimes. And capital crimes are crimes that are punishable by death. Infamous crimes are crimes that are punishable by prison or loss of rights. An indictment is basically a formal accusation. You've been indicted for robbery. Doesn't mean you're guilty of it, just means formal charges have been brought up against you. Okay? The rights of the accused. Here's an interesting one. You cannot be tried twice for the same crime. This is called double jeopardy. In other words, if you are accused of robbery, you rob a quick shop, and you go in there and you rob it, and you go to trial, and you're found not guilty. But then the next day, they go, oh my gosh, we found a videotape. And sure enough, there's Jim. There he is. Here's the proof that he did it. Sorry, too late, guys. He's already been found not guilty. You cannot be tried twice for the same crime. That is called double jeopardy, and it is not allowed. You also may not be, you're entitled to a fair hearing or trial. And, you must have due process of the law. And that comes out of the English Bill of Rights, the rights of habeas corpus, that says that you have the right to a fair trial. Okay. Here's an interesting one to me. You cannot be forced to testify against yourself. I'm sure you've heard 100 times, I plead the fifth. Did you kill that person? I plead the fifth. And really what this is when you're brought up in front of into the court, they're going to ask you to raise your right hand and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. All right? You're promising. You're making an oath. So I do. I promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. All right. So the prosecutor comes up and says, did you kill that person? If you go, well, man, I got to tell the truth. I swore I would. Yes, I did. Well, you're going to jail. All right? You're going to prison. And if you say, no, I didn't, well, guess what? You've just lied. So there's a third option. You can plead the fifth. I plead the Fifth Amendment. I refuse to answer that question on the grounds I may incriminate myself. So you do not have to testify against yourself. They cannot force you to get up there on the stand and testify. And in many cases, and especially capital cases, it's rare that the defendant will testify. It's very rare. All right? And finally, the last part of the Fifth Amendment is the government cannot seize private property for public use without having to pay for it. And I'm talking a fair price, market value. If they need to take a piece of your land to build a road for the common good, they can't go, we're taking your land and we're giving you $100. Tough. No, they have to pay you fairly. But they do actually have the right to take away private property if it's for the public good, public use. But they do have to pay you a fair price. All right? So that's the Fifth Amendment. All right. The Sixth Amendment. Again, that you have the right to a speedy trial by jury. All right? A speedy trial by jury. What is a speedy trial? Well, that's very ambiguous, and I've got to tell you the truth, there's nothing written in stone that says you must be tried within a month or 2 months or 3 months or 6 months. A speedy trial is pretty kind of a gray area. Oftentimes, the defense attorney, the person that's defending the accused, will ask for a delay. They need to make sure that they have all the information. They need to investigate. They need to look for witnesses. So you do have the speedy, your right to a speedy trial. In other words, they can't say, we're going to charge you with a crime and your trial is going to be 5 years from now or 10 years from now. No, the right to a speedy trial by jury is guaranteed by the Sixth Amendment. You are also entitled to an impartial jury, a jury that's not going to favor either side. And you will see before the trial begins, the lawyer for the defendant and the prosecuting attorney will, call prospective jurors in, and they will question them. And they have the right to disallow a few jury members. And both sides are looking for an impartial jury. Well, actually, I should say they're actually looking for a jury that's going to help their cause. But remember, the other lawyer is in there to make sure that the jury is going to be as fair as possible to their client or to their case. All right? The accused must be told of charges against them, and the accused person must be able to question witnesses. In other words, you must be told what you're being accused of, and you have the right to question witnesses that are going to testify against you. More often than not, that's going to be your lawyer who is going to question the witnesses. All right? And finally, and this goes without saying, the accused must be allowed a lawyer. And if you cannot afford a lawyer, you just don't have the money for one, a lawyer will be provided to you by through taxpayer money. All right? So no matter how poor you are, you will have legal counsel. That's the Sixth Amendment. Okay, the Seventh Amendment is jury trial in civil cases. Think of lawsuits on this one. Lawsuits. Somebody comes over to your house and breaks your Xbox 360 or whatever game system you have. All right, you can sue them. Like, oh my gosh, they didn't necessarily commit a crime. They didn't come over here and purposely break it, but they broke it, and you're going to sue them. If the dollar amount is more than $20, then you actually have the right to a jury trial. So if somebody is, you're out, we'll say you're out there and you're throwing a baseball around and you throw it right through somebody's window. If the window costs more than $20, then believe it or not, you have the right to a trial by jury. Another example might be somebody's tree falls on your car, or, in other words, if somebody damages your property without criminal intent, it's an accident, but hey, it still costs me money. You can sue them, and if the dollar amount's more than $20, then there can be a jury trial. All right, and finally, appeals courts can overturn verdicts only if legal errors are made in the original trial, or if the trial is found to be unfair. You hear this all the time. The guy's been found guilty. Well, I'm going to appeal. Well, guess what? You can appeal, and the only way you're going to be allowed another trial is if there were legal errors made in the original trial, or if they can find that there was jury tampering, or your lawyer was incompetent, something like that. Okay, you can't appeal just because you don't like the verdict. Well, I don't like that I'm found guilty, so I'm going to appeal. Again, appeals can only be allowed if there's legal errors made or there's found to be some unfairness in the original trial. Okay, so that's Amendment 7. All right. Amendment 8, bail and punishment. All right. Bail is, if you get arrested, they're going to put you into confinement, jail until your trial. Well, if it's not a serious crime, or if you haven't hacked to death 15 people, then you might get bail. You might be able to leave money. The accused person leaves money with the court, in that, as a pledge that I will return for my trial. That way, you can go prepare for your trial. You can meet with your lawyer. You can talk to witnesses. You can do those kind of things. Basically, you're leaving a bunch of cash behind, promising that you'll come back for your trial. And if you don't, you lose your money. All right? Now, courts cannot set unreasonably high bail, right? In other words, if you're accused of stealing $100 worth of stuff, say, they can't make your bail $1 million. That's unreasonable. But a lot of times, you're not going to get bail if you have if it's a serious crime. You have murdered a couple people, or there's something really egregious, then you're not going to get bail. And you're not going to get bail if you're a flight risk. If they said, hey, this guy has already purchased tickets to fly to the Bahamas or to Mexico, well, you appear to be a flight risk, and you're not going to get bail. Okay. Now, Amendment 8 also says that it is going to forbid cruel and unusual punishment. Cruel punishment. They're not going to chop off your hand for stealing. They're not going to brand you with a red hot poker. Nothing cruel. They're also not going to give you, if you go in and you steal a candy bar, for instance, they're not going to give you 20 years in prison. No, that's cruel. It's unusual. Okay? There's not going to be mental or physical abuse. All right? So the punishment must fit the crime. Remember that. The punishment must fit the crime. That is the Eighth Amendment. Now, a lot of people actually were opposed to adding a Bill of Rights. And why? Because they thought, oh my gosh, does that mean that only these things that are listed down are the only rights the government promises to protect? Oh my gosh, what if I forget something? What if I don't write that down? Does that mean I'm going to lose that right? Well, the Ninth Amendment kind of solves this problem. And the Ninth Amendment, basically says that citizens' rights are not limited to those listed in the Constitution. All right? So we have more rights than are actually listed. More rights than are actually listed. You have the right to wear the type of clothes you like. You have the right to live in a kind of the type of house you want, or the kind of car you want to drive, or the food you want to eat. All right? So we're not going to list that you have the right to eat Hershey bars, or you have the right to wear torn up jeans, or you have the right to wear blue hair. We're not going to list all those. Just remember that people have more rights than are actually listed. All right? So that's the Ninth Amendment. Power reserved, to the people. That's the Ninth Amendment. Finally, the 10th Amendment is the powers reserved to the states. Remember, we want to limit the power of the federal government. Many people are very cautious, very leery of having this all-powerful federal government. So we want to make sure that we limit the power of the federal government. And we do that through several ways. Remember the checks and balances, the division of power. But also we want to put into the Bill of Rights, the 10th Amendment, that powers not given to the federal government belong to the states. In other words, the states are going to set marriage laws. The states are going to decide school rules. The states are going to decide driving age and speed limits on their state roads. So there are lots and lots of powers that belong exclusively to the states, so not the federal government. So the 10th Amendment says, if it doesn't specifically say that this belongs to the federal government, then it belongs to the state. Go Big Red. All right? So there you go. Those are the 10 amendments, the first 10 amendments. They are known as the Bill of Rights. Now, there is 27 altogether. We'll get into a few of those later on, but these are the ones you need to know. Today, the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. All right? Study these, get to know them, and you'll be good to go for the test. See ya.